What is the true cost of borrowing? Hey, what's up guys? Dan Dravidi here. Hope you're all well. So I am bringing you a video all about this really sensitive topic, which is borrowing money. And there is a wider debate whether you should even get into debt and borrow money, but there is a difference between good and bad debt. And we are going to talk about both of those on this video. But we're going to get into one level deeper, which is the true cost of borrowing. This is everything from a mortgage to a bridging loan to raising private funds through an investor or doing a joint venture, and the ups and downs and the good, the bad and the ugly, and the true cost to you and the project, and where I think people should start focusing on when they realize the actual cost of doing business with other people's money. But before we get started, I need you all to do me a huge favor, and that is to smash the like button and don't forget to hit subscribe. So I am sure a lot of you would have heard the old saying, do not borrow any money. Do not get into debt. Spend what you earn, spend what you save, spend what you can afford to lose. And there is some level of sense to those words, but knowing when to listen to them and when to ignore them is the main difference here. Now, there is a difference between good and bad debt. Bad debt is paying for stuff on credit card and not having the money to clear it at the end of the month and then paying the minimum payment. That is one of the most expensive debts that you can get into very, very quickly. And I'm talking about buying things like liabilities, cars, watches, expensive electronics, clothes. There is an old saying, don't buy things that you don't really need, that you can't really afford to impress people you don't really like. And spending money on credit cards when you really can't afford to is a really good example of that scenario. Instead, focus on trying to clear down bad debt with raising good debt. Good debt is using money, using other people's money, borrowing money from the bank for less than it is actually going to make you. What do I mean by that? A house is a really good example. If you buy a house as an investment and you borrow money, you pay interest. And the interest is typically paid every single month. But you then decide to rent that property, and the rental income pays the interest and it also makes you a profit. So even though you are paying an interest rate, it isn't actually costing you anything because someone else is paying that for you, and the difference is your profit margin. Now, there are experienced developers who still don't get their head around this. They literally pay down debt or have no debt on their portfolio because why would they want to pay 3% interest on a buy-to-let mortgage when they can just take the money themselves? This is a bit of a fool's way of running a buy-to-let property or buy-to-let portfolio. And I say a fool's way for a younger generation. There is a time in your life where you've got a substantial enough portfolio and you start paying down debt. So probably when you get to retirement, you have no debt. But sometimes when you have a buy-to-let portfolio and you decide to not raise additional funds onto it because you don't want to pay the interest, but you still have things like a residential mortgage, I just don't get. You're using the interest as a cost to deduct things like tax. But if you don't have interest and don't have other deductions, then you pay full tax on the full rental income. You then use tax money to then pay yourself to pay more tax, to then use secondary taxed income to then pay a mortgage in your personal name. That is a really silly way of using debt across your portfolio and your own home. Personally, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep, and you keep more by spending less personally. So having no mortgage in your personal name is a far wiser strategy than having no debt on your buy-to-let portfolio, and hopefully that is now in a limited company. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about normal debt. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of really boring videos on YouTube from really boring property people who probably don't have a huge amount of experience talking about standard mortgage debt, giving spiel about stuff they've probably just read off the internet. I want to go down to this topic of raising private finance, which is either fixed rate return or joint ventures, and what the true cost is. Now, there are several ways you can structure these deals, but let's try and keep it really simple. Normally, in a joint venture, someone brings the deal and the other person brings the cash. There can be some other amalgamations of who does what. Sometimes the person who brings the deal also manages the full project, and typically the person who brings the cash doesn't get involved. But there may be scenarios where people bring the cash and they want to get heavily involved. This, I think, is a big no-no. And if I ever did another joint venture, and I say if with a capital I and a capital F, I would absolutely make it 100% clear that the person bringing the funds are not involved in the project. One person does one, the other person does the other. But when all is said and done and you've agreed all of the finer details, you tend to share the profit 50-50, 50%. This is quite nice. Both commercial interests are directly aligned, and if the joint venture is working well and the people work well together and you've got all the different eventualities ironed out, ifs and whats, what happen, then it should be a match made in heaven. And I've done well over 150 of these types of deals, and most of the time they are match made in heaven. But the true cost of a joint venture is time. And if you are the one bringing the deal, managing the project or whatever, your time can be swallowed up in that project. But you have to take the rough with the smooth, the good with the bad. But if you're not careful, the joint venture partner becomes what I call a time vampire. They suck you dry of your time. And you can go from literally having a very easy relationship to a relationship which just drains hours and hours of every single day. So try and understand who you're getting into bed with, because the true cost of some of these joint ventures in terms of what it does completely do in terms of bleeding you dry in time is sometimes not worth it. And remember that when you do share that profit 50% can be well over 100% interest, if not more, on their money. So try and understand the true cost of a joint venture. And more importantly, make sure your joint venture partner understands the true cost. It's not a joint venture for the first 12 months or until a certain point where they just don't really want to be the only funder anymore. So then they ask you to put more money in. Joint ventures are joint ventures there to stay. But sometimes they don't understand that. And if they want to change it halfway through, they may try and do it. So understand the true cost of getting a deal done and getting everything set out in a joint venture agreement. The other side of private finance is fixed rate of return. Now, the more of these that I do, the more I realize this is probably where people need to be. And this is what I think people should start focusing on. Now, I was always a big fan of joint ventures, and that's why I did so many of them. And they really did propel me on to a massive property journey. And it is great because the commercial interests are aligned. So that kind of means I don't get paid until the investor gets paid. So you get paid at the same time. It's all really good. But when expectations are that the investor still has to take priority, even though you've tried to iron it out, this is where a fixed rate of return can really help that situation, because a fixed rate of return gives an investor a huge amount of protection. First charge over the property, personal guarantees, debentures over the company assets, all of these different things. So their money is fully protected. Whereas the joint venture is an investment into a joint venture, a partnership, a company. It does have more risk. The fixed rate of return can come with different levels of security. And how I tend to view these is the better the security, the lower the interest paid. So that comes nicely on to what's in it for the investor. You can agree a fixed rate of return. Now, actually, I really like this because no matter how the deal performs, the investor knows exactly what they're going to earn from it. So if the project is really, really profitable, or you've managed to hit a market you didn't quite expect to hit, or you've taken a bit of a risk and it's paid off, you fully benefit from that. And the investor has their return and they're happy either way. Equally, if you make a judgment call or you take a risk and it goes really bad and the project falls, you don't fall out with the investor. They're not disheartened because they're not earning less money. They earn their fixed rate return. So these are the best, I think, ways to take any project forward. Fixed rate return, fixed period of time with a pro rata built in if you can pay it back early. And the true cost of doing business like that, even though you think it might end up costing you all because you're giving someone a fixed rate of return, If you are a good property investor and you know that your ability to judge certain situations, move and shift with different market movements, you should be able to definitely 9 times out of 10 make projects work very, very well for you. So this should work out better for you. Equally, you don't have to go and get someone else's approval, someone else's buy-in for your idea or your new direction, which is great if you really understand the market. And that is the true cost. The true cost of doing a fixed rate return deal is going to be better for you and better for the investor. The true cost of a joint venture is that you will always pay more to the investor if you share the deal. But if they start to change their mind or try to second guess what you're doing or they don't like what you're doing, that can have a ripple effect to actually bring deals into not loss making, but definitely making less profit. And that is a worse cost than a fixed rate of return and the true cost of joint ventures in my experience if you don't iron things out right at the start. So there you have it, the true cost of borrowing money. The best thing to do is to use your own funds or do fixed rate of returns with great people that you've done business with multiple times before, because they are match made in heavens. Everyone wins, everyone's happy, and it enables you to do more deals. But look, that's it from me. Hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.